The 90s was a heck of a time to be alive. Frosted tips were all the rage, cell phones were the size of a brick, and people still knew what a floppy disk was. Advertisement campaigns also hit their stride, with The Simpsons advertising Butterfinger, Crash Bandicoot harassing Nintendo, and Michael Jordan teaming up with the Loony Tunes to sell shoes and save the world from aliens. We're going back to 1996 with Space Jam: The Game. These days, licensed games and movie tie-ins are usually banished to the pits of mobile game stores to be downloaded freely on your phone and pester you constantly for money and ad revenue. Back in the day, however, these kinds of games were a hot commodity. If there was a film or series that tried to gain any kind of mainstream audience, there was usually some kind of game somewhere for it. And more than not, they were pretty bad. Some ended up as well-loved classics such as GoldenEye on the N64, but most were quickly made shovelware. Blues Brothers had one, Wayne's World had one, Home Improvement had one, and you better bet E.T. the Extraterrestrial had one. It sure did. Any kind of film that could possibly fit into some kind of game format pretty much had to have one. So when the oddity of Space Jam rolled out in 1996, there was obviously a game to go with it. How Space Jam came to be is a bit of a wild story on its own that mostly boils down to a string of Nike ads from 1992. Basketball star Michael Jordan already worked with the company for his famous Air Jordan shoes, and somehow, someone got the bright idea of pairing him up with Warner Brothers Looney Tunes characters such as Bugs Bunny. The ads ended up being a massive success to the point that Warner Brothers wanted to do an entire film with the concept. And eventually, after Jordan's retirement, then returned to basketball in 1995, and a difficult search to find recognizable actors willing to be in the film, Space Jam was released in 1996. The film became a big hit with the general audience, even if film critics only gave it a middling reception. But who do you get to develop a game for it? Well, why not the guys who made the Super Nintendo version of Doom? How could this be a bad idea? Space Jam hit theaters on November 15, 1996, while the game's first release by Sculpted Software was on October 31st for the PlayStation of the same year, with other versions coming out later that year and early into 1997. Here we're going to be looking at the DOS version, but the game remains pretty much the same regardless of what it's running on, be it Sony's PlayStation, Sega Saturn, or in this case DOS. There were a few other versions in the works, such as for the N64, but they were eventually cancelled. It's always a bit weird to see a movie tie-in game being released before the film itself, as the game sort of spoils the plot for the film. But that really all depends upon how much it actually follows that plot, and if anyone plays it long enough to get to the end. Being a game based on a film about basketball, Space Jam is what one would expect, a basketball game. Players play as either the Toon Squad, full of classic Looney Tunes characters, or the menacing hulks of the Monstars, roided-up aliens who stole the talent of NBA players like Charles Barkley. The overall plot is mostly skipped as everything takes place during the main game between both teams, seen at the end of the film. And as basketball games go, Space Jam could easily have been worse. 2D sports games are always kind of awkward due to their camera view opposed to 3D ones. In 3D, players can usually pick from a multitude of angles to see everything when they want, and most cameras follow the route of other 3D games by sticking to the back of whichever team you're playing as. In 2D, you can't really do that. You gotta pick either top-down camera or side view, and most of the time, you never get the chance to see everything at once. This leads to things happening off-screen where players can't see, with the camera mostly following the ball. For some sports, this works fine, but for something like basketball, it can mean that you can't see some of your teammates to pass to, or the opponent's net for long shot baskets. Space Jam in particular also plays very quickly, almost a bit too quick to really be able to follow. Basketball is far from a slow game, but if you aren't paying attention and really trying to stay in the game, it can almost feel like the thing is playing itself before you've even gotten the chance to figure out the dang controls. What does work in the game's favor being 2D are its visuals. While the film combines 2D animation with real-world places and actors, the basketball game at the end takes place entirely in Looney Tune land. This means all the characters can be easily represented as their normal animated selves, without any worry of any odd juxtaposition between them and real-world items. Except for the obvious with Michael Jordan. I'm not entirely sure how they went about making Jordan sprites for the game, but it honestly doesn't look all that great. It appears like they went the rotoscoping route of drawing over images of a real person, similar to NBA Jam, but while the tunes mostly look good outside of some pixelization here and there, Jordan's stuck in this limbo between cartoon and live action that make him look even more out of place than in the film itself. Actually playing the game, on the other hand, is something else entirely.
For three. Called for the goaltender.
Even though this version is for DOS and uses a keyboard instead of a gamepad for its controls, it's still very limited on control options and reuses the same keys for different things. If you currently have the ball, you can either pass it to another character or shoot it in hopes of making a basket, and that's really it. There's a short run feature called Turbo that also affects a player's stamina, but stamina is such a non-factor that there's no reason not to use it as often as you can. You can swap out characters in between quarters if somebody's low on stamina to get somebody fresh, but outside of just wanting to change around who your favorites are, there's really no reason to do it. Holding both the turbo and shoot key at the same time when near an opponent's net causes your character to go for a mostly uninterruptible slam dunk, complete with multiple unique animations depending upon who's doing it. It helps add a good bit of character and really brings out the tune's personalities, but depending upon what difficulty you're on, slam dunks are a bit overpowered.
Does he have wings?
By default, the game seems to have been set to easy mode, which means opponents don't really try to do what little defensive moves they can. On defense, the pass key becomes a push/intercept key, letting players knock over opponents or intercept the pass if they're in the right position. This is extremely finicky, as it's generally unclear exactly where the player has to be for a push to connect, or for them to actually pick up the dang ball. A lot of the time I'd knock someone over and set the ball free, only to not be able to pick it up when I followed it on the ground, and whoever I knocked over getting it back automatically when they stand back up. That is, if I could get the push to connect at all. The only real option is to spam it when near an opponent in hopes that it connects. Other than that, the shoot button becomes a jump button that theoretically can be used to block shots or grab rebounds, but mostly I only found it to cause a goaltending penalty if it did anything at all. Games are played either 3-on-3 or 2-on-2, with the player controlling one character and the game's AI doing the rest. While AI teammates are decent at moving around the court, they don't really attempt to play defense much, meaning that it's pretty much up to you to do everything. Since on easy mode opponents don't either, it's not really a problem, but as you crank up the difficulty, it can become a bit frustrating that the character you control is really the only one that can do anything. The medium and hard difficulty cause opponents to start playing more defensively by either knocking the ball out of your hands or intercepting a pass, which actually sets some kind of challenge, since getting across the court with the ball for a slam dunk isn't a given, unlike on easy, and passing can cause you to lose the ball if you aren't careful. Something AI teammates are generally okay at is catching rebounds. Each character in the game has 3 different stats attached to them: speed, shooting, and rebound, and vary between 1 to 3 points for each of them. Jordan, of course, has all 3 points in all 3 categories, and is the only character like that, making him extremely overpowered and basically a must-pick for your team. But there is a little bit of strategy to who you choose. You could pick your favorite characters, or you could try to pick players who work off of each other's weaknesses. Shooters usually have low rebound skills, while high rebound characters are generally slower. If you go ham on shooters for all 3 spots, then you can't really rely on the AI to catch any rebounds. But not having a dedicated shooter makes actually getting a basket that isn't a dunk a lot less likely. Everything we've been talking about so far only pertains to the main basketball playing part of the game, of course. Space Jam also features a variety of minigames, for better or worse. Depending upon which mode you're playing on determines how many of these show up. They are really the only thing that tries to set any kind of narrative, as 2 of them were taken straight from scenes from the film, the first being the Tunes trying to collect Jordan's basketball gear from his house, with the second being collecting bottles of Jordan's secret stuff, which is all a placebo to get the Tunes their confidence back. Both of these collectathons are pretty bad to actually play, as a lot of what happens is up in the air and completely random. As the game lets players be either the Toon Squad team or the Monstars Alien team, both are represented in all of the minigames, even if they don't canonically make any sense. While the Toons search the locker room for bottled confidence, they're hassled by one of the aliens attempting to make them waste time, and the same goes for grabbing Jordan's gear, even though none of them were present in Jordan's house in the film. The house is the only part of the game that takes place in the real world, and borrows a lot of scenery from the film itself, as well as some horrendous sprites of Jordan's dog. Ugh. Both minigames involve a lot of randomization, as the dog is unpredictable and there's no indication if a locker you search is going to have a bottle in it, be completely empty, or have something that just wastes your time. There's hardly any time to figure out what to do as it is, with only a short spiel about the objective given at the start, and for the most part, they are rather annoying. It's not quite as bad if you decide to play as the Monstar Aliens, as they skip Jordan's gear hunt and have their own locker room objectives. Instead of searching for bottles of wind juice, their aim is to float around as a cloud and steal talent from some dude running around, while the Toons try to stop them with traps. This only happens if player 1 is the Monstars team, by the way. If playing multiplayer with player 1 as the Toons and 2 as the Monstars, you'll do the normal Toon minigames, but with player 2 controlling the aliens. This isn't all of the minigames, though. Oh no, there are 3 more! Collecting Jordan's gear happens before a game starts, and the locker room search only happens at halftime. Between the first and second quarter and third and fourth quarter, you'll get to pick from a list of minigames in hopes of gaining bonuses for your team. Winning Shootout makes them better at shooting, winning the Hall of Hijinks makes them better at rebounds, and winning Space Race makes them generally faster. Shootout and Hijinks play mostly the same as normal basketball, just with some extras added to them, and out of the 3, Shootout is probably the best because of that. All you have to do is shoot baskets and get the most points before time runs out, with the only caveat being that you have to play as Yosemite Sam, the shortest character in the entire game. There's no dunking here, and it's all up to the game to decide if a ball is actually going to go in the net or not. And I think I only managed to win this thing once due to that. Anytime I'd get close, the AI would just start draining shots like crazy, which always felt kind of cheap. It's hard to tell exactly how much one of the bonuses from winning one of these minigames really affects the basketball portion of the game. But when Pepe Le Pew managed to make a full-court shot after that one time I won Shootout, it's obvious there's some kind of impact. Believe it or not, that skunk was a true MVP, and that is something I never expected to say in my entire life. The Hall of Hijinks is supposed to be something like a shooting gallery, but with throwing a basketball at targets instead of firing bullets at them. If instead of going for targets, you only focus on the bonus 50 and 100 point signs when they show up, it's really easy to cheat the AI, making it just about a must pick since I could almost guarantee I'd always win. Space Race, on the other hand, is by far the worst minigame of them all. It's a top-down race between the Tunes and Monstar's spaceships, and it controls like absolute garbage. It's hard to stay on the track, there's stuff everywhere to block you, there's pickups that can either help or hinder you without much clarification as to what does what, and for being a race, it's just so dang slow! In order to win, you have to force the other ship off-screen multiple times to fill up a progress bar. And the only way to do that is to get so far ahead that the other ship hits the border of the game's window and explodes. Even constantly shooting the other ship, causing it to be unable to move for a short time, letting you get it off-screen rather quickly and easily, still takes forever to fill up the progress bar. It's just really poorly done. Thankfully, there's a setting in the options menu to turn off minigames altogether, but that of course means you have no way of getting the bonuses for winning them. And you're also only left with a subpar arcadey basketball game. That being said, I can't say I didn't have fun with it. The only kind of single-player campaign Space Jam has is the Intergalactic Tournament, where players are forced to play as the Tunes and have to win 5 games in a row. But it can be played as both teams if you're in multiplayer. You'd think this would be relatively easy since Jordan is on the Toon Squad team and you could just have him all the time. But that's the main catch. He's not. Jordan is completely unavailable for the entire tournament, so you have to rely on all of the other characters. But which ones you pick for which is really important. Characters you pick for one game can't be used for another one outside of whomever you chose as captain, so if you pick all of your good players at the start, you'll be left with the B, C, or D team when things get more difficult. Losing once causes you to lose the entire tournament, but the DOS version has something over its console counterparts, and that being the ability to save between games. This means that if you lose, you can just load up a save instead of having to restart all the way from the beginning, which is a godsend depending upon the game's difficulty. There's a decent amount of strategy here on spreading out characters based on their abilities to try to keep things as even as possible for every match, and there still are the mini-games that can help boost your team if you win them between quarters. I'll accept the one for grabbing Jordan's gear since he's not present in the tournament. But there's still only so much that can be done to boost low-tier characters. And pigs really shouldn't play basketball. Some matches can be pretty intense and entertaining when you get a good back and forth going between both teams. But for the most part, Space Jam just doesn't have a whole lot to offer. The Toon's stats, even without Jordan, are overall better than the Monstars, so as long as you're paying attention and playing aggressively, winning isn't all that difficult for single matches. It gets a bit more interesting in tournament mode without Jordan as a ringer and trying to space out your team, but there really isn't much strategy to the main game as it is, and having to do it 5 times in a row can get rather repetitive rather quickly. Also, for some reason, even though they have the announcer voice from the film commentate during a match and announce each game of the tournament, the main announcement for the tournament sounds like it was done by an intern and is extremely jarring.
Welcome to the Ultimate Challenge in Tournament Play. Win 5 games and gain the prize. It's do or die.
I get what Space Jam is trying to be. It's trying to be an arcade game like NBA Jam or Double Dribble, even using the same engine as NBA Jam Extreme, also made by Sculptured Software, who previously worked on Loony Tunes B-Ball for the Super Nintendo, so they do have some experience making Looney Tunes themed basketball games for some reason. Space Jam is just too awkward and janky to really hold up on its own. Plus, the mini-games don't help, and they're the main thing that makes it stand apart from the crowd. Space Jam, the game, while enjoyable sometimes, has understandably been unable to catch the cult classic status of the film it's based on. While it's a decent base for an arcade basketball game, it really needed more strategy and options for what to do during a match, instead of the main thing just being get the ball in the hoop. While it's true that that is the basics of basketball when you boil it down, that's not the entirety of the sport, even though it is the entirety of Space Jam, the video game. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think about the game or this video in the comments section. I've been MegapieMan, and I'll talk to you guys later.
Pound. Toon Squad down by 30.
Want to see more of my stuff? Click on the video on the left for another Rewind review with Destruction Derby, where cars go to die. Or click on the right for Hellbound, a 90s FPS made 20 years later.